Мы в эфире.
Good afternoon, dear colleagues. I'm very happy that you are together with me today. So today we are going to speak about new scientific and mathematical support of educational process. First of all, let us discuss what changes of Ukrainian schools are around the corner. In December 14, 2016, the Minister of Education and Science of Ukraine, Lilia Grinevich, has presented new policy proposal, New Ukrainian School. As noted by the minister, this political proposal is a strategic document based on which a further government action program for the reform of secondary education will be developed until 2029. The idea of the reform involves 12-year school programs, which will consist of primary education, 4 years, basic secondary education, 5 years, for example, gymnasium, and the profile secondary education, 3 years, lyceums, or the institutions of vocational education. According to the proposal, transition to 12-year education program and the start of a new Ukrainian school to take place in the 2018-2019 school year, next school year. The concept of new Ukrainian school formed on the basis of policy proposals is correlated not only with the best international practices, but also with the needs of the international labor market, announced in early 2016 at the World Economic Forum. It is assumed that in 2020, successful employment would require special skills such as ability to solve complex problems, critical thinking, creativity, and emotional intelligence. This sounds quite convincing and optimistic. However, it is necessary to understand how it all began and how it would be implemented in the Ukrainian realities. Although the creators of New Ukrainian School firmly believe that their project would be implemented in the near future, however, systemic changes in secondary education still need improvement. A significant number of shortcomings, ignoring the motivation of teachers, the creation of high-quality books, and shifting responsibility on the shoulders of not fully integrated territorial communities, discredit the reform of secondary education in the eyes of the Ukrainian society. However, we believe that the new reforms would meet the people's needs, and the 12-year educational program will be more effective than the previous one. Now, some words about long road to reform of the education. In 2014, the Ministry of Education and Science has once again launched a reform of the state schools and developed of a new law of on secondary education. November 6, 2014, it presented the draft concept of Ukrainian education development of Ukraine for the period 2015-2025. During the discussion, the experts agreed that the attention is focused on secondary education because this segment is in critical need of radical and ambitious reforms. During 2015, the ministry started reforming the secondary education. As noted in the final report on the results of implementation of the program, the ministry re-equipped the education facilities, simplified school programs. By the way, today we are going to speak about the simplification of the programs for primary and for secondary schools and their peculiarities. So, simplified school programs developed a network of schools, training, and rehabilitation centers for the education of children with complex disabilities and optimized residential network of orphans facilities. February 18, 2016, People's Deputies sent draft on the new law on education to Science and Education Committee for revision. And as noted by Alexander Spivakovsky, first deputy chairman of the Verkhovna Rada Committee on Science and Education, The rework of the document would last to the end of February, beginning of March 2017. Now we'll know that this new law on education, appeared in September 2017. You can find this document in the internet and get acquainted with it. In addition to the introduction of 12-year secondary school, the draft law provides the voluntary certification of teachers, establishment of a national quality assurance agencies, National Center of Professional Qualifications, and the development of the national qualification system. According to the current trends in Europe and the world, there are three forms of education: formal, officially raising the level of education; informal, raising outside the formal training system. It can be training, clubs, courses; and informal, self-education. At the same time, the authorities decided to complicate the life and conduct a reform of education together with decentralization reform. This project provides for consolidation of rural schools and the creation of supporting schools. This is a new system of qualified education for children who are learning in small towns and villages. As Minister of Education noted, each small village will have a primary school. At the same time, all regions would have supporting the schools with the highest standards and qualified staff. Each school will have at least 3 branches. Branch is a school of the first level, grades 1-4, which are as close as possible to the place of children's residence. Children from many villages would attend the supporting schools in order to be able to study in the specialized high schools. The children might take school buses, and children from distant villages might live in special dormitories. This year, for the first time, the government has allocated money for school buses, 650 million Ukrainian hryvnias. It is expected that 600 million will be spent from local budgets. However, the problematic situation with the textbooks for pupils of 4th, 7th graders showed that in the process of decentralization, there are some things that cannot be transferred to the local level. From now, money for the textbooks will be allocated from the public funds. Korea, Czech Republic, Armenia, and other countries have supported Ukraine in the difficult task of reforming education. Cooperation of the Ukraine-Czech Republic is carried out within the modernization of the public education system in Ukraine program approved by Czech government in 2014 and was designed for implementation during 2015-2016. Its total budget amounts to about 2 million euros and provides improvement of the institutional capacity in the field of education and technical assistance and educational institutions. Korean experience is interesting for Ukraine. This new direction in education prepares for a successful employment, education after school. This is so-called STEM education. It would be really helpful for Ukraine, given that the Republic of Korea has shown strong results of PISA testing, taking first place. In turn, for the first time, Ukraine will take part in PISA student assessment in 2018. Thus, the reforms should improve the working conditions of teachers by reducing bureaucratic control, expansion of academic freedom, and the formation of space for creative work. Intervention will be limited to the educational process of state bodies and local authorities. Educational standards will be discharged in the expected learning outcomes. Education and Science Minister of Ukraine, Lilia Hrinevich, has said Finland intends to allocate 6 million euros to Ukraine for a period of 4 years for the secondary education reform. This project will have an estimated cost of 6 million euro. It is designed for 4 years. This is not too much for such a period of time, but we will invest these funds into creating a new model of training teachers. Because at present, we have an archaic model of teacher training, which provides young teachers with theoretical knowledge, but doesn't give them modern tools for working with children, Hrnevich said on the air of Channel 5. In her words, the Finnish government decided to support the reform of secondary education in Ukraine, in particular pedagogical education and the transition to a new kind of school. Hrnevich noted that before the start of the 2018-2019 school year, it is necessary to retrain 20,000 teachers. Meanwhile, a pilot project will start in the 2017-2018 academic year, under which some 4 schools in each region, both rural and urban schools, will start working according to new standards. Now this project is piloted. By the way, this year we are going to have a new state standard of primary education and the new state standard of basic and complete secondary education. As I noted at the beginning of our today's classes, I said about the conception of new Ukrainian school. There are 10 key competencies of the new Ukrainian school. You can find them in this document. By the way, you can download this conception. It is situated on the platform of Ministry of Education and Science, mongov.ua, if I'm not mistaken, the name of the site. So you can find this document in Ukrainian and in English. So 10 key competencies. The first is communication in the national language and mother tongue if different. It is typical for Ukraine, especially for eastern part of Ukraine, where we live. For example, in eastern part, we speak Russian. It's our mother tongue, but the state language is Ukrainian one. It includes, this key competence includes the ability in speech and writing to express and interpret ideas, thoughts, feelings, facts, and views by listening, speaking, writing, and the use of multimedia. The ability to interact by linguistic means with the full spectrum of social and cultural aspects in education, at work, at home, and during spare time. The realization of the role of effective communication. The second key competence is communication in foreign languages. It is the ability to understand adequately concepts expressed in a foreign language, to express both in speech and in writing the ideas, thoughts, feelings, facts, and views by listening, speaking, reading, and writing in a broad range of societal and cultural contexts. The skills of direct activity and intercultural communication. The third key competence is mathematical literacy. It is a culture of logical and algorithmic thinking, the ability to use mathematical, numerical, and geometrical methods to solve practical tasks in various areas of activity. The ability to understand and use simple mathematical models. The ability to build such models to solve problems. The fourth key competence is competences in science and technology. It is a scientific understanding of nature and modern technology, as well as the ability to use it in practical terms. The ability to apply scientific methods to observe, analyze, formulate hypotheses, collect data, conduct experiments, and analyze their results. ICT and digital competences, the fifth kind of key competences, envisage confidence and critical appraisal in the use of information and communication technology, or ICT, to produce, research, process, and exchange information at the workplace, in the public domain, and in personal communication. Information and media competence, the fundamentals of programming, algorithmic thinking, working with databases, and skills in internet security and cybersecurity. Understanding of the ethics in information processing, for example, copyright, intellectual property, etc. The sixth key competence is lifelong learning skill. It is the ability to search and master new knowledge, to gain new skills, to organize an educational process individually and in groups, in particular through effective resource and information flow management, an ability to set educational goals and determine means to achieve them, to build one's own educational and professional trajectory, to appraise your own educational achievements, and to learn throughout life. The seventh key competence is sense of entrepreneurship. It is the ability to generate and bring to life new ideas and initiatives in order to increase both one's own social status and well-being and development of the community and the nation as a whole. The ability to behave rationally as a consumer, effectively use personal savings, and make rational decisions in employment, finance, and other areas. The eighth key competence is social and civic ones. They include all forms of behavior that are needed for effective and constructive participation in society, in the family, and at work. The ability to work with others to achieve results, to prevent and resolve conflicts and reach compromises. Respect for the law, human rights, and support for social and cultural diversity. Number 9, the ninth pre-last key competence is cultural awareness. It is the ability to appreciate objects of art, form one's own artistic tastes, independently express ideas, experiences, and feelings towards art. This competence envisages a deep understanding of each person's own national identity as a basis for an open attitude and respect for the diversity of the cultural expression of others. And the last 10 key competence of the new Ukrainian school is environmental awareness and healthy lifestyles. It is the ability to use natural resources in a prudent and rational way within the framework of sustainable development, the realization of the role of the environment in human life and health, and the ability and willingness to live in a healthy lifestyle. These key competences and cross-disciplinary abilities create an infrastructure that provides the grounds for successful self-fulfillment of the pupil as a personality, citizen, and professional. All mentioned competences are equally important and interrelated. Children acquire each of them consistently, gradually, and when studying different subjects at every stage of education. All competences have the following skills in common: the ability to read and understand what has been read, the ability to express ideas in oral and written forms, critical thinking, the ability to logically justify a position taken, leadership, creativity, the ability to resolve problems, estimate risks, and make decisions, the ability to modulate emotions in a constructive manner, to apply emotional intelligence, the ability to work together in a team. As part of the competency approach introduction, a new system for the measurement and evaluation of educational outcomes will be created. In particular, the content of the external independent assessment will be changed. So that is all about 10 key competences. Now, the next point we're going to discuss is changing in the programs. Changing in the programs. One minute, please. There are some key changes. Some key changes in renewed educational programs, 5th, 8th, 9th forms, according to decision of results on EdEra platform and in subject working groups. The first, the application of the competence approach to the teaching of foreign language in the context of the provisions of the new Ukrainian school in accordance with the state standard for basic and complete secondary education has been improved. A draft explanatory note to the program has been created. Defined by the hierarchy of training goals, the subject of the training is agreed with the sectoral and educational objectives, as well as with the European recommendations on language education, teaching, studying, and evaluation. The terminology apparatus, in particular the names of communicative skills, has been harmonized with the general European recommendations on language education. There are 4 integrated content lines. I'll stop a little bit on them a little bit later. There are 4 integrated content lines in the curricula. They are the following: environmental safety and sustainable development, civic responsibility, health and safety, entrepreneurship and financial literacy, which are aimed at creating students' ability to apply knowledge skills from various subjects in real-life situations. A new section was added to the content part of the program, integrated content lines and appropriate methods for their implementation, in which for each class, the relevant communicative skills are formulated for the topics of situational communication. The expected results of educational and cognitive activity of pupils, according to the levels and descriptors of communicative skills of general European recommendations on language education, are defined. The lexical, grammatical, and phonological range of the student at the end of the 9th grade linguistic competence is outlined. The approximate distribution of content in classes according to the spheres of communication, the topics of situational communication, speech functions, and linguistic equipment is specified. The grammar minimum in the 5th grade of the specialized secondary school with intensive learning a foreign language, the present and past continuous tense forms, which were removed from the programs for primary school during their renewal, were included into the grammatical minimum. The content of the sections socio-cultural competence, general educational competence, in description of the competence potential of the subject foreign languages to the appropriate competence with avoiding duplication. Indicative assessment parameters are introduced in agreement with the programs of primary school. Quantified indicators of oral perception are specified. The content of the topic media in the 9th form is changed with the aim of its optimization and in accordance with the interests of contemporary students. Typical and stylistic inaccuracies are fixed. Educational program is a frame one. That is why it doesn't limit teachers' activity in choosing an order and content of each topic. So they can be combined. Some topics can be learned integratively or can be combined. For example, rest and leisure plus traveling. Clothing can be combined with weather. Traveling plus country's language of which is learned. The language inventory is indicative and is chosen in accordance with communicative situation, the needs of students, and the principle of concentric learning. It isn't the purpose of the study, therefore, it isn't considered as separate lexical or grammatical themes. The curricula do not establish a procedure of studying the situational communication topics within the framework of the academic year, but only indicate the content, the study of which the subject of thematic and semester control. Teachers can use the sequence of educational material disclosure within the defined themes, but so that the logic of its elaboration isn't violated. It is allowed to use course books published in the current year and in previous years, taking into account changes in the programs. The teacher is free in the choice of additional teaching methodological literature and can apply the one that best implements his teaching methodology and the competence potential of the subject. The program doesn't limit teachers' autonomy and creative initiative, providing flexibility in the selection and distribution of the learning material in accordance with the needs of students and select teaching aids. As I mentioned, there is a new chapter in the content of the program, integrative content lines and indicative ways of their realization. For each form, according to the subject of situational communication, the appropriate communicative skills have been formulated. Integrative content lines, they are the following: ecological safety and sustainable development, civic responsibility, health and safety, entrepreneurship and financial literacy. Separating in educational programs such integrated content lines as ecological safety and sustainable development, civic responsibility, health and safety, entrepreneurship and financial literacy is aimed at the formation in students of the ability to apply knowledge and skills from various subjects in real-life situations. Integrated content lines are implemented during the learning a foreign language in specialized schools, in general educational establishments, as well as during learning a second foreign language. Activities and abilities of content lines are selected in accordance with the communicative needs, the subject of situational communication, age and level of students' preparation. Content line ecological security or safety and sustainable development aims at forming social activities, responsibility and environmental consciousness among students, readiness to participate in solving environmental issues and the development of society, awareness of the importance of sustainable development for future generations. By means of foreign languages, students are focused on perception of nature as an integral system, the relationship between a person and the environment and its dependence on natural resources, the willingness to discuss issues related to environmental conservation at the level of your region, state, and at the global level. Ability to present and justify projects aimed at preserving the environment and ensuring its sustainable development. Implementation of the content line civic responsibility contributes to the formation a responsible member of the community and a society that understands the principles and mechanisms of their functioning. By means of foreign languages, students are focused on provide a sound assessment of the peculiarities of life in a democratic society, present its role in its development, express their civic position and their views on various social problems, both in their own country and in the world. Discuss issues about their role and place in modern multilingual and multicultural environment, justifying their own views with concrete examples from the life of the world community. The study of issues belonging to the content line health and safety educates the students as a spiritually, emotionally, socially, and physically competent member of a society that is able to adhere to a healthy lifestyle and create a safe living environment. By means of foreign languages, students are focused on ability to discuss human health issues, awareness of the influence of harmful habits on human health, observance of traffic rules of conduct on the water and elsewhere. Content line entrepreneurship and financial literacy is aimed on the development of a better understanding of the younger generations of Ukrainians about the practical aspects of financial issues, saving, investing, borrowing, insurance, lending, etc. By means of foreign languages, students are focused on ability to discuss certain issues of economic activity, as well as their role in the modern technological environment. Ability to talk about the proposals of your professional choice, readiness to solve your awareness and your attitude to financial opportunities of modern professions, ability to explain the features of thrift and competent distribution of finance or money. At this slide, you see educational programs which were renewed and offered to be used in this year, in 2017-2018 school year. The first and the last programs are for primary schools. Навчальні програми з іноземних мов для загальноосвітніх навчальних закладів і спеціалізованих шкіл із поглибленим вивченням іноземних мов 1-4 класи. Київ, 2016 рік. Навчальні програми з іноземних мов для загальноосвітніх навчальних закладів і спеціалізованих шкіл з поглибленим вивченням іноземних мов 1-4 класи зі змінами. Київ, 2016 рік. The second, the third and the fourth programs are for secondary school. Навчальні програми з іноземних мов для загальноосвітніх навчальних закладів і спеціалізованих шкіл із поглибленим вивченням іноземних мов 5-9 класи, 10-11 класи, Київ, 2017 рік. Програми для загальноосвітніх навчальних закладів, друга іноземна мова. 5-11 класи, Київ, 2017 рік. So, these educational programs are available to be used. There are some orders and letters of Ministry of Education and Science. They are presented here. Про оновлені навчальні програми для учнів 5-9 класів загальноосвітніх навчальних закладів. Наказ Міністерства від 7 червня 2017 рік, номер 804. Про структуру 2017-2018 навчального року та навчальні плани загальноосвітніх навчальних закладів. Лист Міністерства від 7 червня 2017 року, номер 1/9-315. Key changes. We have already spoken about these key changes. About integrative learning, some topics. That educational program is a frame one. So let us go further. Integrative content lines. Now, levels and descriptors of mastering a foreign language by the end of 9th form, according to General European Recommendation on Language Education. They are the following. Foreign language in specialized schools, level B1. Foreign language in secondary educational establishments, level A2+. And foreign language is a second one, level A2. It is by the end of the 9th grade. And what do all these letters B, A, A2, A1, B1 mean? We can find in General European Recommendations. There is a special book, and all the levels and descriptors are described in this book. Now, you see a chart. Indicative parameters for evaluation the students' educational achievements. They are not the main indicators in education, but they are available. Now, you see indicators, skills, and grade from the 5th to the 9th grade, secondary school. The first skill is audio perception or listening. What is an indicative parameter? Volume of the heard to the recording material in limits. From the 5th to the 7th grade, 2-3 minutes. The 8th and 9th grade, 3-4 minutes. Visual perception or reading. Volume of one text in words in limits. The 6th grade, from 100 to 150 words. The 7th grade, from 150 to 200 words. And the 8th, 9th grades, 200, 250 words. Oral interaction or dialogue. Everyone's sayings in replicas correctly executed in a language relation. So how many replicas? Yes, in dialogues. The 5th, 6th grades, 5 replicas. The 7th, 8th grades, 6 replicas. And the 9th grade is 7 replicas. Oral production or monologue. The volume of sayings in sentences. The 5th grade, 5-6 sentences. The 6th grade, 6-7. The 7th grade, 7-8. The 8th grade, 8-9. The 9th grade, 9-10 sentences. Written production or writing. The volume of written information in limits. We mean how many words? Yes. The 5th grade, 50-60 words. The 6th grade, 60-70 words. The 7th grade, 70-80 words. The 8th grade, 80-90 words. And the 9th grade is 90-100 words. This year, the Ministry of Education and Science, for the first time, together with the planned publication of textbooks, has bought electronic versions of books from publishing houses. Thus, there is a complete set of 9th grade textbooks for all subjects, titles, and authorship purchased in 2017. On the website of the Institute for the Modernization of the Content of Education, electronic versions of textbooks for students of 9th form are divided according to the subjects. So it is much more convenient to look for them, and the person spends less time. Now some words about the course books for the 9th grade, which were printed in 2017. I'll name only English course books. The 9th year of teaching, it's the first foreign language. The authors are Burenko, Karpyuk, Morська, Любченко Олександр Сергійович, Любченко Ольга Миколаївна, Тучина Наталя Васильівна. And English as a second language, it's the course book for the 9th grade, but the 5th year of learning. The authors are Kuchma, Morська, Bondar, and Pahomova. They were the authors of previous grades course books. For example, for the 7th grade, for the 8th grade, and last year, there was the course book for the 9th grade. Besides English course books, there are some course books for German and for French. 200 English teachers participating in the pilot project New Ukrainian School will be taught by British Council coaches and Cambridge English extramural and online training for foreign language teachers who are piloting new educational materials and monitoring the results. All this is envisaged by the project retraining of foreign language teachers who will pilot a new state standard of primary school. The project will be implemented in cooperation between the Ministry of Education and Science of Ukraine and the British Council in Ukraine, in partnership with Cambridge University Press and Cambridge English Language Assessment, the Goethe Institute, and the French Embassy in Ukraine. So the English language project for primary school teachers is designed for several stages. The first is conducting foundation training for teachers. Next, piloting new teaching materials and launching an online teaching methodology course will take place. It also provides for on-the-job training for teachers in the middle of the learning process and the final ones at the end of the school year in partnership with Cambridge University Press and Cambridge English Language Assessment, the Goethe Institute, and the French Embassy in Ukraine. Now, let us stop at changes in educational programs for primary school after transformation processes in secondary school, primary school. A little bit about primary schools. The Ministry of Education and Science of Ukraine started the implementation of new syllabus for foreign language learning with new approaches and content. This process received a lot of attention from the British Council, the Embassy of France, the Embassy of the USA, and others, which organized methodical seminars with participating experts from foreign countries. Contents. Previous orientation towards language knowledge has been replaced by the development of language skills, their practical application, strengthening of educational motivation. Ukraine has developed and is implementing its own conceptual framework of early foreign language learning. This curricula emphasizes the purpose and understanding of foreign language, discusses social and psychological assumptions for education, didactical principles, development of basic communicative skills. The foreign language curriculum of the primary stage is characterized by practical and aesthetic terms indicating that the pupils are meant to participate in children's culture and literature through words, pictures, music, and movement. Young learners are taught to understand cultural differences. Language teaching is linked to the relationship between the socio-cultural context of Ukraine and of the country of target language. A young learner with his or her individual personal and age characteristics in focus of the entire language process development. Psychological comfort during a lesson should stimulate the children's motivation to learn a foreign language, ensure the security of young learners, prevent from the fearing of making mistakes in the process of the development of language skills during different language activities. The training of teachers who will be qualified to teach young foreign language learners, foreign language to young learners has been arranged at inner service teacher training centers, as well as at pedagogical colleges. Methodology. At the primary stage, the basic communicative competence is formed. But the methodology tries to avoid routine and mechanical communication. Games, drama, movement, music, rhythm, exercises are welcomed instead. The basic of foreign language methodology in Ukraine is the communicative language teaching approach. For instance, that entire learning is developed to individual or group activities of every learner. Language materials are presented in situations which stimulate informal communication adjusted to a certain age group. All types of language activities are developed in an integral manner. At the primary stage, the priority may be given to reception and reproduction in oral and written discourse. In order to develop listening skills and understanding of spoken language, teachers should promote listening and provide different texts and situations. In order to develop writing skills and understanding of written texts, teachers should promote various reading methods and writing strategies. Students should be exposed to real and meaningful language according to the experience, interest, and tuition goals. A teacher should closely monitor and assess the progress of students, give them advice, teach how to learn, be confident in themselves, and seek personal goals. Textbooks. Textbooks and other teaching materials play an important role in the process of curriculum stage. Both national and foreign textbooks based on latest methodologies are used in the process of foreign language education. There are sets of textbooks that consist of a textbook, workbook, audio tapes or CDs, and other supplies. New national textbooks for foreign languages are developed according to the general curriculum framework and standards and language proficiency levels of the Council of Europe. National textbooks for learning English, German, French, and Spanish are published for all grades of primary comprehensive school. Textbooks of some British, German, and French publishers are very popular in Ukraine as well. National textbooks, in contrast with foreign ones, places much more emphasis on the intercultural aspects of training and learning of a target language, and this resulted in a more intercultural and sociocultural oriented methodology. 3 alternative textbook packages are offered in primary school now. 100% of the Ukrainian schools are delivered the textbooks due to the state budget. Language schools select textbooks from the list of obtainable textbooks approved by the Ministry of Education and Science. Information about textbooks, which can be used for education, is given in methodology literature and periodical for teachers. Assessment. The assessment criteria at the state level are defined by the educational standards. These standards outline the general and subject-specific skills, knowledge, and understanding. For instance, the things to be achieved by students after completion of a certain learning phase. The educational standards must ensure that students acquire specified knowledge and skills when there is a wide choice of methods and teaching materials. The tasks for the assessment, which are used in the process of learning during research of student achievements, are developed according to the educational standards. In foreign language learning, the objectives of assessment are the skills and knowledge of school children, which comprise foreign language communication competence in 4 areas of communicative activity: reception, listening and reading, production and interaction, speaking and writing. 3 years of foreign language study at primary comprehensive school should enable students, 4 years, to acquire A1 plus level, according to the national educational standards and common European framework. Some words about trends in primary school reform in Ukraine. The current trends in secondary education in Ukraine are defined in terms of its reforming according to the standards of European education system. This issue demands the revision of education standards, curricula, secondary school structure. The changes in the secondary school are associated with its transition to competence approach. The president of the Academy of Educational Sciences of Ukraine, Vasil Kremen, has defined the strategic issues of secondary education development, lifelong learning, the ability to obtain new information, learning to use the knowledge. It should be noted that the major issue of competence approach is the use of knowledge in life. Primary school reform in Ukraine is aimed at adopting competence approach, which is currently being implemented in a secondary education. Thus, at the meeting of the board of the Ministry of Education and Science of Ukraine on April 8 in 2016, the changes to the primary school curriculum from the first to fourth grades were discussed, taking into account the new approaches to teaching children. The basic ideas raised during this event are preparing children for life through the mastery of specific competencies during learning, reforming curricula on the basis of competence approach, correction of fundamental learning objectives, changes in the learning assessment according to the age, psychological features of young children to ensure they feel comfortable. Cancel teacher's red pen, for example, which allows not to fear to make mistakes. Review the functions of the institutes of continuing or postgraduate education, which should become the centers of practical implementation of competence approach by providing online resources with access to video lessons which based on competence approach. Pedagogical freedom of teachers, independence in determining the number of hours to study specific curricular topics. Teachers should take into account students' individual characteristics. However, these ideas have raised certain problems which should be taken into account. For instance, some teachers may neglect the adopted changes in the curriculum. In this case, methodological commissions should constantly monitor the process of implementation of new standards in primary education. Another problem refers to changes in educational standards. As in every class, there are students with different levels of learning ability. In the definition of standards, the attention should be focused on the differentiating the levels of competencies. The curriculum should be supplied by options that allow to raise children's interest in learning and to provide pedagogical freedom of teachers. The issue of banning assessment of achievements of primary school children has raised a discussion. Some scientists expressed the idea that the replacement of pens by pencils in performing written assignments and banning red-pasted pens for teachers, on the one hand, will allow students not to fear mistakes, and on the other hand, it will make it impossible to focus to one's own imperfections and to return to the unsatisfactory outcome in order to practice certain gaps in knowledge. We spoke about the simplification of educational programs at our first week, and I ask you to look at the presentation, which is devoted to teaching a foreign language at different age stages. The simplification of educational programs. It was a common project of Ministry of Education and Science and EdEracom platform. The tasks of the project were the following: deleting extra information from the program, making it simpler, deleting doubling, more logical presentation of important topics, making knowledge nuclear, and providing competence approach. The background of the project. So why was it necessary to provide this project? Complaints of teachers, parents, and children about overload of primary school programs, mismatch of educational programs for age-specific features of children, and obsolete information and approaches to teaching it. Realization of the project. This project started in 2016. It was completed in a short time, during 2 months, during June and July 2016. In the contest of online applications, 20 moderators have been selected. Moderators were the teachers from different regions of Ukraine. 2 stages of discussion. There were 2 stages. 8,236 comments from 4,015 participants were processed. Most comments on @ERA are right constructive suggestions from practicing teachers. I don't know if you took place in this discussion, but all right constructive suggestions were from practicing teachers. The moderators worked in the online regime because it was impossible to meet together because people were from different regions and parts of Ukraine. But they worked in the online regime. They answered the questions of the commentators. They worked out and summarized the submitted proposals and comments, carried out explanatory and analytical work. The most discussed were educational programs in mathematics, Ukrainian language, literary reading, and English. So we see that English educational program was one of the most discussed ones. Often changed were structured according to forming key and subject competencies. Some changes were made to the explanatory notes with the purpose of adjusting the goals and objectives of the studying the subject, the peculiarities of the organization of studying the program material, etc. At the final stage of the finalization of educational programs, in the Ministry of Education and Science held round tables with the participation of Deputy Minister Pavlo Khobzei. The scientists of the National Academy of Pedagogical Sciences of Ukraine, representatives of public organizations, and leading experts are involved. This allowed improving interdisciplinary connections, ensuring continuity between, or succession between preschool, primary, and basic general secondary education. So the results of the project were the following. 13 programs for primary school were changed. You see, українська мова, літературне читання, трудове навчання, мистецтво, я у світі, природознавство, основи здоров'я, математика, інформатика, образотворче мистецтво, музичне мистецтво, фізична культура and іноземні мови для загальноосвітніх та спеціалізованих навчальних закладів. So you see, our program is among these 13 programs for primary school of renewed programs. By the way, I have already shown you the folder on the flash. Please pay attention. The folder is called Розвантаження програм початкова школа. If you open this folder, you see some videos. They are from the platform of Ministry of Education and Science. Your task will be to listen to these videos. Tatiana Belaeva will tell you about the tendencies of renewing the programs for primary school. We started watching them, these videos, I mean, but I ask you to open these videos and to watch them. So, key changes. A fixed number of hours has been taken to study each topic. Now the teachers will determine them on their own, taking into account the level of class preparation, the availability of teaching and methodological support, and regional features. Then, duplication of content in educational subjects was removed. The redistribution of topics between classes has been done to bring the learning process in line with the age-old possibilities of junior pupils or primary school children and the principle of health saving. The unified terminology of the programs, which should be used by the teachers and authors of textbooks, is approximate to the age-old features of junior school children. Implementation of results. Approval by the Ministry of Education and Science Board. Presentation at the August Teachers' Conference's introduction in schools from the 1st of September 2016. So you can watch these presentations, for example, using YouTube platform. Updated programs will prepare new requirements for assessing students' achievements and new methodological recommendations. Placing additional educational materials on open internet platform. Now, some words about concrete changes in educational programs. By the way, some key points you can find in my presentation devoted to teaching foreign languages at different age stages. So your task is to look through this presentation again and find this information. So, short description of key changes for primary school of secondary educational establishments. First, providing the introductory oral course in the first half of the first grade. Significant simplification of the requirements for writing in the second half of the first grade. Clarification regarding the use of half-printed font, print script. Reducing the amount of speeches in the speech competence of speaking and the volume of written communications in the language competence writing from the first to the fourth grade. Clarification of the requirements for phonetic linguistic competence from the first to the fourth grade. Removal of complex grammatical forms belonging to the language level A2. Plural nouns ending ES. They were removed from grade 1. Possessive nouns, grade 3. Present perfect, grade 4. And structure to be going to grade 4. Transfer to the second grade of the negative form of inductive sentences. Transfer to grade 4 future simple grammatical form. Removal from the linguistic lexical competence of the theme school supplies, school things, grade 2, which duplicates the requirements of the first grade. It's a rather problematic point because such a topic as school things should be used in primary school widely, and unfortunately there is such a demand. Then transfer to the third grade the topic month of the year, days of the week in linguistic lexical competence. Simplification of the requirements for writing in grade 3, for writing letters and postcards. Now it is short reports and greeting cards, SMS are issued on a sample. Clarification of speech functions in describing the emotional state, expressing the mood. Specification of the requirements of the language competence. Listening, taking into account working with additional audio and video materials from grades 1 to 4. Clarification of the topics of situational communication. Leisure, toys on a walk, grade 1. Holidays and traditions, food, grade 2. Apartment or flat, in the kitchen, nature and environment, seasons, leisure, trip on vacations, grade 3, holidays and traditions, celebration at the cafe, grade 4. Emphasis on work with the textbook and vocabulary. It is general educational competence. And for specialized school, primary school educational programs, it is emphasized on the obligatory observance of the oral introductory course in the first half of the first grade. The subject of situational communication is brought into line with linguistic lexical competence in grade 1-4. Means of expression are detailed in accordance with the speech functions in grades 1-4. The topics of linguistic grammatical competence in grades 1-4 are specified. Deleted past perfect and past continuous tense formulas with grade 5 transmission. So these tense forms were removed to grade 5. Present perfect and past continuous. Transfer of the study of tense forms as past simple to grade 3, future simple and the structure to be going to grade 4. In general educational competencies, it is emphasized on work with a textbook from the first grade, on work with a textbook and a dictionary from the second grade. Specific requirements for speech competencies, listening, speaking, reading in grades 1-3. Requirements for writing in grades 1-3 are simplified. Specifies the volume of texts for listening in grades 1-4. Everything, all the specifies are in the presentation I meant. Please open this presentation and look it through again. The amount of speeches, monologue and dialogue speech, texts for reading and written messages in grades 1-4 have been reduced. Requirements for linguistic phonetic competence in grades 1-4 are specified, and speech functions pay attention to the ability to express a mood. Now I think it's enough about school programs. Now let's speak a little bit about state standard. Now we have the state standard of base and complete secondary education. It was the last edition was in 2011. The state standard of primary education in 2013, and this year the special standard, the state standard for of primary school for children with special educational needs. It also exists, and it was proclaimed in 2013. This year, we're going to have new standards both for primary education and for a basic and complete one. The state standard of the basic and complete secondary education use syllabi for teaching foreign languages in secondary institutions, as well as modern teaching methods, reflect the current needs of the society. These documents, which are based on the recommendations of the Council of Europe, promote the principles of communicative teaching, integrating all the skills, considering individual learning styles, and fostering learner autonomy. Learning languages for life is another major principle of the foreign language teaching. The state standard of the basic and complete secondary education states the teaching languages in the upper secondary level continues for the development of competences and skills, listening, reading, speaking, and writing, in order to reach B1 plus level according to the Common European Framework of Reference. The major message of the state standard, apart from the Declaration of European Integration, is to organize foreign languages teaching, considering practical needs, motivation, and abilities of the learners. At the time when communicative teaching was introduced, Ukrainian educational system had to address a number of challenges. How learners will use the knowledge of foreign languages, what skills they will need in order to be able to use foreign languages to achieve certain aims, what will stimulate learners' motivation in acquiring foreign languages, what proficiency level will teachers of foreign languages need, what teaching materials and means will be necessary. For example, course books, reference books, electronic and digital materials, internet resources, etc., in order to support the teaching process. National curriculum. The growing need in communication and cooperation between different countries, people with different languages, and various cultural traditions, the new educational system in Ukraine demand complete changes in approaches to teaching, renovation of the content, methods of teaching foreign languages at the secondary school level. The Ministry of Education and Science of Ukraine has made up a decision on creating the new curriculum on foreign languages teaching for non-specialized secondary schools. Introduction of the communicative language teaching into curriculum coincide with the initiation of new system of performance assessment. Due to the active support of such international organizations as the British Council, the American Council of International Education, Department of Press and Culture of the American Embassy in Ukraine, British publishers, Goethe Institute, French Embassy in Ukraine, new syllabi for foreign language teaching in grades 2 to 11 were prepared. Currently, teaching foreign languages is being realized with two sets of syllabi. For the schools with 11 years of studies, approved in 1998, and for the schools with 11 years of studies, approved in 2010. The syllabi for the schools with 11 years of studies is based on the so-called grammar translational principle, focusing mostly on the grammatical competency. The form, rather than meaning, is in the center of teaching foreign languages. Unfortunately, the latter doesn't assist comprehension, and limitations in using linguistic means are evident. This traditional approach also treats the learner as a passive recipient of the ready-made information. As a result, learners stay uninterested and passive during the lessons. Under such conditions, foreign languages learning isn't leading to communication. New syllabi for the schools with 11 years of studies are based on the development of the communicative competences. This approach is focused on linguistic functions, supporting to develop communicatively oriented language learning. Methodology ground of these new syllabus are correlated with the Common European Framework and mostly oriented at the development of the linguistic competences. The learner is in the center of communicative approach. The role of the teacher is to involve the learner into creative cooperation in order to prepare and effectively perform the lesson using discovery approach, personalized activities, and projects. Foreign language possession levels. The graduate students of the secondary school must be able to demonstrate the ability to the active use of the foreign language in real living situations, as well as for the purpose of getting some knowledge. The basic level of language skills: listening, speaking, reading, and writing, corresponding to the level B2 of the recommendations of Council of Europe. The knowledge of the basic syntactical, semantic, grammar, and phonetic patterns of the foreign language, which is corresponding to the level B2 of the recommendations of Council of Europe. Again, I remind you, the description of all the levels, A1, A1 plus, A2, A2 plus, B1, B1 plus, B2, and so on, up to C level, you can find in this book, Recommendations of Council of Europe. I ask you to read the description of each level, and you should understand what does it mean. What is it, level A1? What does it mean, level A1 plus, and so on. Let's go further. The ability to cope with the communicative tasks, taking into account socio-cultural and social-linguistic aspects of the language. The ability to use the school educational experience for the further independent work, aiming self-perfecting in the future profession. The ability to use the authentic material of the foreign language, aiming self-education and for any personal purpose. Curriculum principles. The main principles of the curriculum are communicative direction, individual orientation, student autonomy, integrated teaching different language skills, listening, speaking, reading, and writing. Educational goals. Teaching foreign languages assumes students' practical mastery of the speech skills on the level sufficient for foreign language communication with 4 types of speech activities: listening, speaking, reading, and writing in standard situations. Language and speech competence. The basic speech skills include the ability to oral communication in standard educational, social, cultural, and living situations. The ability to listen and understand the content of the authentic texts. The ability to read and understand the authentic texts of different genres and types with different level for understanding. Reading with the understanding the basic content, reading with a complete understanding. The ability to fix and reproduce necessary information in a written way. Students must master the program material as a means of designing and understanding expressions in the process of communication on the level determined by the standard. For this, students should understand and master communicative functions of the means of communication for their correct application in definite speech situations. They must select on their own the language and speech means which are the most optimum for the realization of the communicative intention and are adequate to the sphere of communication in socio-functional aspect. Now, some kinds of competencies. Socio-cultural and socio-linguistic competence. They include the ability to select and use the speech forms for the realization of the communicative intentions in specific situations, the ability to consider the cultural peculiarities, the regulations of the verbal and non-verbal behavior in standard communicative situations. Discursive competence. It is the ability to manage the speech and to structure it by means of the thematic organization, logical organization, coherency, style, and vocabulary. Rhetorical effectiveness. Strategic competence. It is the ability to choose effective strategies for solving communicative tasks. The ability to acquire knowledge individually for practical application, to plan the process of studies, and to evaluate own language. Content substantiation. The final object of the program is the development of mental faculties, and abilities of students to use foreign languages for reaching communicative goals. Principles of the selection of content. The content of the spheres of communication, functions, concepts, phonetic, grammar, and vocabulary materials are selected according to the following principles. Repetition. The goal of the adequate behavior will be reached by the student gradually. The functions and the concepts are reiterated cyclically every year. The gradual growth of complicacy. The content chosen for the initial stage is less complicated than those following it. The complicacy grows gradually. Motivation. The priorities in choice and succession are given to the themes which are most necessary for students. Potential for language learning. The content of the program both satisfies the general educational needs of the students and assists the formation of a strong basis for their further self-perfection and the use of the language in a professional sphere. Concepts, functions, and functional indices. The spheres of communication stipulate the students' practice in operating various concepts and definite language functions. Concepts are considered as the meaning and general ideas which students need for communication. They're divided into general and specific. General concepts, for example, time, quality, duration, location, etc., may appear in every topic. Specific concepts are determined by this definite topic, for example, home, meals, health, family, etc. The function of the language is considered as the goal for the use of the language unit in the utterance. In the methods of foreign language teaching, the communicative functions are usually described as the categories of behavior. For example, greetings, requests, permission, etc. According to the principle of the repetition, functions may repeat in different topics. Teachers may prefer these or those functions, subjects, to the presence of educational materials. Functional indices are determined for every function. Functions may be realized in any conversation or discussion. For example, changing the topic of the conversation, offering own opinion, etc. They are not bound to the definite topics and can be used in any of them. Methodological basis of modern foreign languages teaching and studying. Some words about this. Integration of national education and foreign language teaching, in particular into the world educational system and European educational institutions, which are connected with foreign languages teaching, is carried out according to the main principles of state educational policy in Ukraine. The priority of education, its democratization, humanization, and humanitarianization, nationally oriented trend, continuity, multicultural, variable and open character of educational system, the indivisibility of teaching and upbringing. The general strategy of foreign language teaching is determined by the needs of modern society and the level of the development of linguistic, psychological, pedagogical, and adjacent sciences. This strategy includes communicative approach, which determines the practical goal of foreign language teaching and learning. For instance, mastering the foreign language intercultural communication by means of the formation and development of the intercultural communicative competence, its components. The principles of the communicatively oriented foreign language teaching, I will only name these principles, and your task will be to read, to get acquainted with them. So the first principle is the principle of interactivity. The second principle is the principle of the speech intellectual activity. The principle of integration, the principle of contextualization, And finally, the principle of the dominating role of the uninterpreted semantization. The content of each principle can be found, so you can find the information about each of these principles. We have only some minutes. Let us just summarize a little bit what has been said. First, we spoke about the reform of education, which started in 2014, and it is continued up to our days. So it is a necessary thing, and I think that all the reforms will be very useful both for teachers and for students. Next year, all the students who will go to the first grade will learn in a new way, with the use of principles of New Ukrainian School. What else did we do? We spoke about the renewing of educational programs for primary and for secondary schools, for new trends, for changing, changing the content of educational programs. And finally, we spoke about the new tendencies of teaching the foreign language. Dear colleagues, I thank you for your attention. See you on Monday, on the 26th of February. Thank you. Goodbye. See you later.